Welcome to 1850 Main Street, a place where friends get together and talk about their country and hope for a brighter future. Your hosts have built this spot over the past 40 years, meeting every day with people who are in the headlines and behind the real stories. Today, Rob Walgate and Alan C. Duncan from the Public Square are joined by David Zanotti, the CEO of the American Policy Roundtable.
Did you miss any of our coverage of last week's Democratic National Convention? Don't worry, we've put all three of our conversations about the DNC together for you right here at 1850 Main Street.
So is this a sense of obligation, or is it like jumping off the high dive and there's no water in the pool? I'm not exactly sure. But it seems that part of the concept of 1850 Main Street is that it's just like walking into a tavern or a pub and saying, did you see what I saw? Did you hear what I heard? Were you watching last night and the opening convention day for the Democrats? Now, so that's kind of the conduct by which we come in here today to talk. Now, that, of course, sets up expectations on the part of everyone that's overhearing this conversation, and then the whole thing begins. So let's throw a disclaimer up. In some ways, I candidly admit that for 40 years now, for 45 years as an organization, and me for longer than that in service in this arena, I probably have cared too much. I feel that this stuff is deadly serious, and I worry about my kids and my grandkids, and I also worry about the legacy of this amazing experiment called America. For me, America is life and death. I recognize most people don't look at it that way. But I also have to be candid and say that I have an extraordinary bias against the existence of these two political parties from studying American history for my whole adult life. Actually, from my junior high school, from the 9th grade life. Our country is like the accounts of miracles that were needed during the New Testament, where Christ would walk by and see someone who'd been afflicted for a lifetime and ask them, do you want to be healed? Or have you grown so used to being infirmed that you really don't remember what it would be like to be healthy anymore? Because I will tell you that what I saw last night and what I saw a few weeks ago in both conventions, I look at this and I say, there's something wrong there. There's something seriously wrong with what we're experiencing right now. And it's not getting better.
I don't think it's getting better. And maybe I missed it last night. I watched as much as I could. I fell asleep there for a while.
Did you see James Taylor?
I didn't. Did he go after Biden?
They cut him. I figured they had to cut somebody. And I knew, well, they kept...
Yeah. The RNC did not cut Kid Rock, so...
No. I thought the RNC was going to cut Dana White on the intro, because they were running by him, but then the DNC was running so far behind, and I'm like, my goodness. They kept listing at the bottom of the screen, speaking tonight. I'm like, how are all these people going to speak tonight? I'm like, the math doesn't work. But I guess, to your point, Dave, the humanity of it all, in the sense that we're less than 6 weeks removed from one political candidate, the attempt on his life of being assassinated. So I didn't hear any, hey, I thought there would be some, hey, we're glad you're safe. We're glad you're okay. Our party's going to be better in office than you, but we're glad. And the fact you don't hear that, I'm like, man.
Just wait.
I know.
Just wait. Yeah, I know you've had three thoughts that we've already walked right past, okay? In the realm of body language, people are going to go like, wow, he's just talking right through him. No. I see it leaping out of your eyes.
The only thing I was going to say is not some profound insight, but just the concept of a rally or let's get everybody in the room holding the sign, and RNC or DNC, they just leave me cold. It doesn't do a lot for me.
It creeps me out.
Yeah, even in football, we'd be ready to get out there and face the other team, and you could tell the coach was like turning it on now. Now it's pep talk time. Anytime I can see you giving me the pep talk, I'm cold. Don't try to rally me. if you're genuinely inspiring, then I'll be inspired, but not if you're just turning it on. And I feel like that's what the RNC and the DNC, they're both turn on the pep talk and here we go. It's just boring.
Speaking of turning it on, I think the one moment that was clear last night was when Jamie Raskin, when the teleprompter went out on Jamie Raskin and he froze talking about Article 2 of the Constitution and it wasn't going and he's like staring and looking ahead. And I'm like, that shows it's so much acting and reading and emoting what you see.
That'd be tough. I mean, it would even if you were following along, it'd be tough.
It'd be very tough.
Super scripting. Okay, so you spent a lot of time in basketball arenas. All right, and this is basically a basketball arena where they're in. Yeah, how come it looked like there were 100,000 people there? Did you notice the camera angles and the lighting and the way they set it up?
They did a great job.
The production was
the number of signs. The number of signs.
Everybody got the sign.
Signs per square inch. Amazing.
And they all had the same one. They were on cue.
At the right
here's one thing about
where was the cheerleader orchestrating?
Here's one thing about the arena aspect of it that all these arenas do now is they have. I know I shouldn't look at things like this, but when I see things, I'm like, man, I wonder what that cost. Yeah. I wonder what it's like watching fireworks. Ooh,
well, how do you turn an arena blue, right?
They use the curtains to close off the upper deck. They do it at all these arenas now.
Yeah, do it for concerts.
They do it for concerts. If they haven't sold in the upper deck, they don't sell tickets up there. They'll use curtains. I don't know how much curtains they used last night, but I'm sure they used some.
Who produced this? Do we know who's the producer?
Yeah, it's in there somewhere.
I've been looking. I couldn't find the actual director, but they're doing a really nice job.
Their production value
over time.
Here's the thing. Yeah, over time. But here's the thing. Like, did you see the walkout on Rob Reiner? Rob Reiner comes during one of the breaks or something. Here comes Rob Reiner walking out from the. Okay, so if they've got Rob Reiner in the seats, what do you think
who's producing it?
Doing the producing?
Yeah. Speaking of the people that walking out and gave speeches, I did listen to AOC's speech. And
you were a braver man than me. I'm sorry.
Here's what I said. I don't
have enough brain cells left.
Well, I was cutting watermelon. Cutting veggies and fruit has been like therapy for me. If I want to watch something that I have to get through, that's my go-to. Peppers, watermelon.
But you have a knife in your own hand.
Pomegranate. I do.
That's a little dangerous.
I said to my wife, Rachel and I, she was doing stuff, getting kids lunches. We're talking about school. And I said, if anything, her being up there speaking just shows how great the United States of America is in the sense that she's talking about being a waitress. She's talking about working in a bar. Now she's one of 435. How can she bash the system that she benefits from?
I'll take you a step farther. I admire her commitment and her energy in her work. She's out there in the arena doing it. The sound of her voice makes my eyes bleed. I can't handle the sound, and her delivery, her mechanism, her attitude, and the content of what she is saying is so phenomenally shallow and fundamentally divisive and destructive. It's like spewing out just her ideas. The person is completely separate from the ideas. I admire the fact that she has the courage to be in the arena. I admire that. But what she's having to say is toxic. And her ideas.
Agreed. And what other country could she go from where she was to where she is now to
and say what she says about the government? And so I don't care whether she's a Republican, Democrat, or independent. It's the ideas.
Yeah. Well, and another idea that had me, again,
she's welcome on this program, by the way.
Oh, would love to have her. Another idea that was tough to watch, and I sat and watched some of this with my son, my 16-year-old. He was interested in I think he was interested in my commentary. He likes to see dad's blood pressure get high.
Get you fired up.
I think it was Representative Crockett from Texas, and she was giving a speech, and she talked about the death penalty in Texas. And in the same sentence, she said reproductive rights. And I thought no one edited her remarks to let her understand that the reproductive rights she's talking about is in essence a death sentence for some. That's what it is.
Okay, let's take a second. There were people marching in the streets that day dressed up as abortion pills.
Yes.
There were ice cream trucks out there, sort of, but this time they're not giving out ice cream. They're giving out abortion pills so that you can take the free abortion pills and vasectomies. What political party, look,
Well, here was the irony to me was
What jingle do you play off of that truck?
I don't know, but when you
Not James Taylor. He got cut.
yeah, like what's the theme song from It or something? I don't know. Yeah. Joe Biden, when he spoke, if we want to jump to his remarks for a second, he quoted somebody saying, "Family is the beginning, the middle, the end." Basically, family's everything.
That's what his dad taught him.
He opened with those remarks early, and I thought that's a nice sentiment. I agree with that sentiment. But you're also the party that has, to your point, free abortion pills being handed out on the street, free vasectomies, and then like a giant statue to IUD out there.
People dressing up like death pills, like pills.
This is not those are not a family first movement. You know, maybe there's a medical reason why you may need a vasectomy at some point. I don't know. I'm not talking about exceptions or anything like that. I know people who've had this procedure. I'm not trying to judge them, but those are all going in one way. Those are birth stopping things, and you're in a country that's not reproducing itself.
Yeah. I mean, it's like if you were in the diaper business and children's toy business, would you be out there dressed like an abortion pill? Well, I got news for you, politicians. If you've got no people, you've got no country.
But the interesting thing is, and I know we've only seen Monday night, but they were out there. They were outside. The Democrat Party did a good job of trying to make, and I'm using air quotes on radio, of course, make it look normal.
You're on
make
video
people.
now.
What's that?
You're on video now.
I'm on video now, so I can use air quotes. Make
Yeah.
it look normal. Those folks weren't on the stage. Those folks, everyone on the stage was in their suit. Everyone was dressed appropriately. And I found that to be interesting. I'm anxious to see what the rest of the week looks like.
Okay, I'm burying the lead right now because the one thing I know that I've got to get out of my mind and out of my system, and I've been walking this through for hours already, and it's still morning. Looking at both these conventions, both these conventions, the production, the behavior, the music, the processing, all of it. These aren't political parties. These are cults. If these were religious leaders on the platform, they would be soundly condemned across the culture
100,
as cults.
100%.
These are cults. When I watched the people, when Kamala Harris made her brief appearance on stage, I watched the euphoria. It was repulsive. It was frightening to me to see young people jumping up and down. I mean, I can understand a 13-year-old screaming over the Beatles, but Kamala Harris, what are we talking about here?
That's where it starts to feel scripted for me. Do you think that was a memo went out? We talk about the production value. Really, they're doing a great job.
How could it have not been a memo when she throws them the feed line on the call and response?
Yeah.
And what was it? The response back was "We fight." What was it?
Yes.
Right? Their line. Okay, their line, and remember saying "We fight." Oh, whoa, was that like the wink and nod? Like, okay, we love everybody, we love America. No, go kick their. Okay,
it felt very scripted. It kept cutting to like Tim Walz has this amazing smile that he can turn on, but it just comes across a little creepy
because
maybe
his standard face position is frown.
It's very. I guess you're right.
It does. It comes with age and sag. It comes a little bit with that kind of look.
Okay, someone from a Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. That he looks like the guy that goes and like.
Oh my gosh!
Who's that guy? The prospector guy.
You nailed it. Oh my! I can see the hat. The whole thing.
Yeah, doesn't he look like that guy?
Somebody's got to meme that. Come on, just
Jonah, put it up, buddy.
Political cartoons are fair game across the historically they're valid. Okay, that's hilarious.
Well, they are valid. The problem with the mainstream media is it seems like there's only one side that they're willing to go after on certain issues and things.
Well, conservatives have the Babylon Bee, so I guess it all cancels out. It all comes out in the wash eventually.
Okay, so here's the point. This is cultic behavior.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah. This is non-thoughtful and it's completely non-productive. And it is designed to incite people. And the people who are going to yell and scream about this and about this particular communication that we're doing, they're going to be people who are afraid that Donald Trump is not going to win the White House. Or they're going to be people who are going to listen and who we've triggered their triggers. There's something seriously wrong when our answer to our frustration is kill innocent unborn children. There was a point where there was almost an attempt to dignify the privacy of the fact that abortion should be safe, legal, and rare. Now it should be enshrined, absolute, and celebrated. We have gone way over the edge, and this is not a Republican-Democrat reality. This is a cultural reality.
And that was the part that was getting me a bit fired up, in the sense of when they kept calling it a Trump abortion ban. And I know we're working on a project to help people understand that better of what
People
those
have
words
no
actually
idea
mean.
how desperate we'd love to start spewing the research we've been working on for the last year. It is substantive.
Can we say one fact?
Yeah, sure.
One fact, there are more abortions taking place today
Right now.
than there were under Roe.
What? Wait, stop. Hold it. There it is. Well, you said what? Can we put a graphic up?
Right.
There are more abortions. Last year, there was over 4 million pregnancies in America, over 1 million abortions, and there were more abortions last year than under Roe versus Wade.
It's because there's not an abortion ban the way they say there's an abortion ban. It's not even close.
Not even remotely close. There are 9 states right now whose laws exceed Roe versus Wade. 9 states that have blown right past Roe.
Because that's what it did. It returned it to the states.
And the people that stood up there last night and told their stories about their
And those were some emotional stories.
Of course
those
they
were the
were.
exceptions.
But not only were they the exceptions, they were the exceptions in a period of time of transition.
Yeah.
States need time to work out the wrinkles, to get it through their departments of health, through their departments of insurance, to get it all the processing through to the doctors and to all the different people who play in this process. They have a role to play. Everything is changing, so it's going to take time. Those people got caught in the seam of the transition of it all. And they made choices. They all still are alive. They all still got the abortion that they needed.
And in one, if not two of the stories, it sounded like miscarriage care. It wasn't even an abortion. That's the problem, too. Words don't mean what people say.
3 out of 1 million instances, they strain 3. And the statistical reality is that less than 1% of all abortions even fit into that category to start, which is roughly 10,000 cases a year, which can truly be worked through. And we're working through it. They got caught in a seam. And it's tragic. They suffered.
Sure.
They suffered.
Real stories.
But to try to build that into an enraged, cultic, nonsensical reality, saying that therefore we must do what?
This whole conversation reminds me of the Screw Tape Letters. Lewis puts these words in his demonic character's mouth. He said, one of the ways that you get people is get them running around with a fire extinguisher when there's a flood. Get them focusing on the wrong problem.
Yeah.
We're focusing on the wrong problem. Of course, we want women to have rights.
They do have rights. God gave them to them.
Exactly. Yes. But the problem in our culture isn't forced births, as people call it. We're not reproducing. We don't have enough human beings to populate the next generations. And that's not something that people want to talk about. So our problem's different. We're fighting the wrong battle with the wrong tool.
And we're talking past each other. Yeah. We're talking past each other. And that was the thing where RJ was sitting with me last night as he was listening to those stories. And I went to turn and he's like, I want to hear this. And we talked and we heard the one couple from Texas. And I looked at him and I said, you just need to know there's no one in America that I know that wants to see that woman suffer the way that they're portrayed. There's no one. And he said, and he's asking questions. It was a great conversation I got to have with my son. And I got to explain to him that people were being exploited for political gain. And what they were doing was not being honest, because no one wants to, that family, thank God they're healthy and okay now. But when she had that procedure done because of the child not being alive in her, no one wants to see her suffer.
No. And here's the thing. There's no state in the union that prohibits abortion in regards to the life and physical health of the woman. None. Zero. There's not a single ban in any state on that. There never has been. There is not now.
I do have to ask you, as we're talking about the convention, your thoughts on the fact that the president got pushed into the infomercial hour and it was the middle of the night before he got out of there.
Here's the irony. Joe Biden delivered one of the best speeches he's ever delivered.
It was the largest applause he's ever received in his life.
That was a 3-minute standing ovation to start. 4. Yeah.
All right. At least that's what I heard this morning. It was 4.
3.5.
Okay. And they didn't want America to hear that speech. They didn't want America to see him. There's no question about that. He should have been on at 7:00 at night.
Well,
unless they were trying to say, hey, he can stay up late. He's still awake at this hour.
No, if that was the case, they would have kept him. But what I found interesting is, the state they need more than any is Pennsylvania. And he got on stage at 11:25 in Pennsylvania.
So the other irony is, I'm sorry, somebody's got to say it. 30 days ago, Joe Biden was the devil to the Democrats. They did a political hit on him. 30 days later, they stand up and give him a 3.5-minute standing ovation of, we love you, Joe, we love you, Joe, we love you, Joe. They didn't love him 35 days ago, 40 days ago.
Did you hear the song, the walkout song? Your love has lifted me higher.
Well, then, and we've got to stop. We'll come back. We could get into the religious overtones as well, because clearly the Democrats have got religion. I just don't know what exact religion it is.
Do you want to know who and what is going to be on your ballot this November? Check out ivoters.com and enter your address and zip code. No name, no phone number, and no email address required. Find out who all the candidates are, who's endorsing them, and who's funding them. We're not bound to any political parties, candidates, or campaigns at iVoters, and we won't tell you who to vote for. You're smart enough to figure that out for yourself. What we will do is give you all the facts and none of the fanfare. Did we mention it's free? Free minds, free speech, free agents. iVoters.com, a public service of the American Policy Roundtable.
So wait a minute, he held the phone up?
He called me on his cell.
Right.
He held the cell phone up to the mic, talked to me like this, and then my response, he held to the mic. So
I wonder how it sounded.
I don't know. He kept me for like 16 minutes, so it must have been okay.
The engineer was going nuts.
Yeah, I would have been. Yeah.
This is a common experience of us being able to talk with radio stations all over the country, particularly news stations.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to go ahead and try to stay at somewhat degree current with the Democrat National Committee. Now, some people are going to say, you all didn't do this for the RNC. And is there a reason because you just were being critical? No, honestly, we have been struggling here with lots of capacity questions on the amount of volume of product that's going out the door now between the public square, 1850 Main Street, kids on the square. And so we're wrestling with all this. Then some pernicious people, perhaps seated figuratively or literally around this table, are trying to push us harder and faster into doing some of this with video as well as with audio. And so that's amplified the complications as well. But we have been referring back to the RNC event as well, so that people wouldn't think that our particular concerns and in particular criticisms are isolated to one or the other. Well, we could easily review and blast lots of stuff that we saw.
Well, in years past, we've...
Too late at night, boring, endlessly repetitive.
We've also been to the RNC and covered that before in years past. So it's like, sometimes you just can't win.
Right.
And people want to criticize something, you can't win.
New people that are coming across the communications networks and products that are coming out through the public square are trying to figure out who we are, what we do. And since everything is siloed and everyone lives on a side and everyone's got some big billionaire network behind them and blah, 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 they don't know where we fit. And so that can frustrate people because everybody wants the puzzle pieces or their logo thing or their Lego thing, just like in the right color, right line, right order. We don't fit. Okay. That's we don't fit. The public square is a place. 1850 Main Street is a place. These are public forums of dialogue that are not provided to you by somebody that's doing a boatload of marketing. It's trying to make a buck off of you or get your information from you. This is actually old-fashioned public service. Okay. This is for the common good.
It is. And you talked about us being on radio stations all over. I got a text from a gentleman the other day. I was on a radio station in the Midwest. I did about 15 minutes on the RNC, and I get a text from a guy who I coach his son in basketball. And he said, "Were you just on the radio?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Were you talking politics?" I said, "Yeah." He goes,
Anything else to talk about?
"Yeah." He goes, "Yeah."
Religion?
He said, "Well, you referred to yourself as an independent to let it be known before you started throwing daggers. Why is that?" And I explained to him why that was.
And it's
the
not
parties are part of the problem.
Thank you. It's not to curry favor. Like if you could be all things to all people, everybody would like you. No, this approach, and nobody likes you. Okay?
Yeah. So that is what we do and what we have done, and we'll continue to do it. Yeah. And when we talk about this stuff, some people think, "Oh, you're carrying the water for this person," or "Why don't you say this person's name more?" We're just trying to educate people and talk about the truth. We don't claim to know it all, but we're looking for it.
Ideas have consequences, particularly if you act upon them. Now, what the parties have done since they've decided to move to a primary system where they're where their nominee is supposed to be selected by the votes of the people in the states who belong to their political party. That was the idea. So then this is what it's back in the 60s, these giant free-for-alls, these giant convention events were held to elect somebody because people would show up at the convention with the favorite son status from the state of Missouri or the state of Illinois, and you'd have the delegates divided up among the states, and then you'd have 3 days of backroom, cigar-filled smoke rooms where people have to make decisions. There it is. Now, the decisions are supposedly all made before anybody gets there. So these are infomercials.
I have a question.
These are like 4 days of infomercials.
Pep rallies.
But who made the decision on the Democrat side? The voters didn't make that decision. Where did that decision come
You mean
from?
this time around?
This time around.
You mean all the primary votes that were canceled because some group of people whom we don't know and have not identified themselves in hearings or meetings or whatever that were not public.
This is why Joe Biden said he was not going to drop out of this race on July 8th.
Right.
The voters had spoken.
Yes.
In the primary process on the Democrat side.
He did not want to disenfranchise them.
Now they have their 4-day infomercial. And of course, the Republicans had their 4-day infomercial prior. Now, comparing them would be a whole nother wonderful, probably 3-episode series on comparing the two. I'll just throw one thing up that's interesting to me. Donald Trump gets shot in the head. Fortunately, it was the ear, which is part of your head. And we were spared as a nation by 1/4 of an inch watching a human being have their brains blown out on live television. That we would never recover from, let alone the loss of a life, the tragedy of the circumstances, and the human ramifications of all of that. If someone was looking for a miracle that happened in this year, therein is a miracle of what we were spared. He gets up after being on the ground, which seemed like an infinite amount of time if you were probably there. When he gets up, bloodied, he raises his fist and says, "Fight, fight, fight." Interesting. The Democrats, knowing what a vulnerable position that puts them in, because this is an ultimate human moment, decide to come up with a slogan for their convention, which is, "When we fight, we win." And they've got that scripted in call and response. When we fight, we win. When we fight, we win. When we fight, we win. Now, so both groups have been using the word fight in their 4-day mega conference infomercials a lot. Fight, 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 fight. It's all over the place. So here's my question. Who are you fighting? Who are you fighting? What are you fighting? Where's the fight?
I think the DNC is fighting the American public, fighting to take choices off the table for the American public. That's what I think.
But they said last night in particular, all they're about is freedom, that it's the other guys who are taking everything away.
Let's look. This party that says everyone's taking everything away, this party's been in power at the White House for 12 of the last 16 years.
Well, and to be specific, if in fact the Harris ticket wins, this will be first off, I think it'll be John
It'll be
Podesta.
16 out of 20.
16 out of 20, and John Podesta's eighth term in the White House.
Yeah, so he will have been there through it all. So
longest serving president.
But they want to talk about freedom. That's the thing that leaves me scratching my head is, it's only been 3-4 years since we went through COVID. Let's talk about freedom. All the freedoms they wanted to take away. That's when I hear Tim Walz say, we're trying to keep the government out of your doctor's office. They've wanted the government to be our doctor for over 30 years. They tell our kids what vaccines they have to have in their body.
How about Barack Obama's classic moment? Now that they don't call it Obamacare anymore, it's popular. Or he said, now that it got, sorry, I said that wrong.
Yes.
Now that this got popular, the Affordable Care Act got popular, they don't call it Obamacare anymore. Where do you think I was when that
Hopefully not driving.
Yeah, we've got a lot of history on Obamacare. A lot of history. Okay, and nationalized health care.
Like having read it before.
Let me call back the question. Who are they fighting if they're not fighting each other?
I mean, they are fighting each other.
They're fighting each other, but they're fighting to keep power. That's the fight to retain power. And
so this is not a debate or an argument. This is a fight.
It's a power struggle.
This is a fight. So we're in a fight. Both sides, they're fighting each other. Okay. That's kind of serious for a country that's supposed to be out of many one, right?
Well, what did you make of Barack Obama's speech where he called for grace among those who disagree with you?
But when we fight, we win. This is what I don't understand. We have people say, well, but first off, understanding that I have yet to discover a term for what Barack Obama does so effectively. Now, as a person that has spent a lot of time in history, and I study presidential speeches. I have worked with people who specialize as graduate level professors studying presidential speeches. Barack Obama is almost impossible to define because his form of speaking is a dialectic. He says one thing and then he says the other. And then he moves the ball back and forth to ultimately get to the conclusion. Like he'll praise the wonderful system of America, but then help you understand that wonderful system is based upon old ideas. Therefore, we must now move this wonderful system to new ideas. But if we move it to the new ideas...
You wrote a book on this.
Oh, that one, A Spare Hall. Yeah, so you just happen...
We try to grab books off the shelf on 1850, and I grabbed this one. Yeah. This was your breakdown of
his second inaugural address. And in that piece, he basically shifts the paradigm of America to a collectivist nation, which is the same as saying a Marxist socialist enterprise. He does that with perfect historical accuracy, but his dialectic, his terms, you don't see it coming. It's like it's a magic act.
Well, I was going to say, so I watched his speech from the DNC, and you're watching this, and he's so good at speaking.
He's so good
in front of people. It's like the classic term rhetoric. I'm going to use the term rhetoric, but not in the pejorative sense. So someone might say rhetoric. I mean the classic art of rhetoric.
Yes.
He's amazing at it. You're watching. I hate everything I'm hearing, and I can't help but like the guy.
Well, yeah.
I know someone that was at an NBA, I think it was an NBA Summer League game, or no, it was in Vegas. It was I think it was the Olympic exhibition game. And I think he was there. And there were a lot of VIPs there and people they showed on camera or people hobnobbing next to the court. Obama's who everyone wanted to be around. President Obama.
The charisma and the talent that man possesses is pretty amazing.
You may disagree with what he's saying or be confused by what he's saying.
Yeah, I shouldn't say I hate everything he's saying. Some of it sounded good, but then it kind of ultimately didn't pay off.
He is almost impossible not to listen to. The flip side of that is Oprah. All right, I could not, and everybody has their limits. I can only go so long before my character starts to melt down. And I'm not about to be lectured by a
billionaire
by a billionaire personality. I'm not now. I can't say an actor because I'm happy to be lectured by Ronald Reagan. I'm happy to be lectured by St. John Paul II. They were both actors. That was their avocation in life, early in life. And so I'm not suggesting that a disparaging word toward the industry and,
Which
and
she's
the
been
art.
very successful at what she's done.
I respect every bit of her success,
and earned it, yeah.
but she is not a worldview expert, a historian, a political scientist. She is someone who is simply espousing what the world the way she wants to see it happen, and we're all supposed to listen because she's Oprah. And I don't care whether this is happening at the RNC or the DNC. I don't get it. All right, Obama. We got Obama. The one word, Obama. Here's an example of what you're talking about. In one word, Obama did the whole thing. He did the whole, they could have saved 4 days, let Obama speak for 2 minutes, and he would have done the whole thing in one word. And here's the word: stale. He called Donald Trump stale. He basically pronounced that the shelf life of that person's relevance and his capacity no longer exists. He's stale. That's like one of the foulest words you can use about describing someone in that position. He's stale. They called him petty. They called him self-centered. They called him all these other names. But the one that was the ultimate shot, he's stale.
Yeah.
Who wants a stale president?
You know what it wasn't? It wasn't that one for me, though. It wasn't. It was Bill Clinton making the statement that he's still younger than Donald Trump. That's the one that grabbed me. That's the one that maybe it resonated on top of stale. Not only are you stale, but this is part of their vengeance.
See, that's almost like a self-own, though. I mean, he doesn't look younger than him.
He doesn't, but you're looking and you're knowing they're in the same.
But this is one, yes, this is one of those realities. There was a vengeance because you Republican people drove Biden out of this because you called him old and we had to bear all this. Now it's our turn.
Yeah.
We're younger than you. So now you've got to,
Well, it's hard to feel bad for Trump in the name calling department. I mean, that's kind of, he's kind of made his stock and trade, calling people
no
names.
sympathy there whatsoever.
He's in that arena. So,
but the point is, you see what they're doing. This is classic Obamaism. This is to flip the tables on you and get away with it with one word that sounds so clever, but you can't recover from it.
I feel like his wife did some of that as well in her speech when she got up and lectured regarding money, regarding wealth. I'm like looking around like, hang on a second.
Yeah, that was very interesting.
She didn't come from an extremely poor family, number one, to start with.
How many homes do they have now?
I believe now they have 3. And they've made tens of millions of dollars. Someone reported their kids' net worth are in the millions.
Do you hear how they talk about wealth? Taking more than what your fair share. Taking.
Okay.
Are you taking or earning?
There's two more things we got to get out here.
Can I say one more thing about Michelle Obama's speech? Which, I mean, she's good as well. She's a talented speaker as well as far as much more talented, I think, than Kamala Harris is by a lot.
Yes.
But she said, we don't get to change the rules, so we always win. I almost fell over. We don't get to change the rule.
The vice president did.
How did you get the candidate that you're telling people to vote for?
Well, that was the thing about some of their speeches is the hypocrisy. I'm like looking around like, are you serious in all this?
It's almost, you do have to laugh. I just can't believe they can say it with a straight face. What about all the lawfare that Trump has been enduring? How did he get
the Law and Order theme? I think Tuesday night they played the Law and Order theme, and I'm like, you got to be kidding.
Listen, even for somebody listening that thinks, no, Trump is a convicted felon, 34 counts. Even CNN's legal analyst said that this was a Frankenstein case that they cobbled together and made no sense. That was CNN said that about that. And then look at what they're doing against RFK Jr. Look, this guy can't get and stay on a ballot. And he's saying this is the DNC that's doing this. So for her to get up there and say with a straight face, to applause, we don't get to change the rules, so we always win. The ultimate in projection.
All right. And I know that it makes no sense at all to bring up questions of hypocrisy when you're dealing with people whose worldview denies the reality of absolute truth. I understand that.
Right. But I'm not even saying I didn't even say hypocrisy. I'm just saying
you're assuming that upon you. I was about to own it myself.
Well,
I've said the words. I've said it multiple times today.
I'm just saying people can hear you saying it, and they should be able to just know that you're lying.
Or seeing it. And this is the point on that introduction I was trying to get to is I know what I'm about to say doesn't make sense because we're asking people who do not, who unabashedly and honestly deny the reality of absolute truth no. So here's my question. How can you have a person who was impeached for the presidency because they lied under oath about having sexual relationships with an intern in the White House on multiple occasions, who frequented the circles in which Jeffrey Epstein also traveled, standing on the stage as if they are a paragon of virtue and are qualified to address the nation on what's best for our future? And it's the Democrat National Convention. Now, the Democrats would say, oh, you mean Donald Trump showed up at your place? No, I'm talking about Bill Clinton, in case anybody forgot.
What?
And not a word is suggested that there's something inappropriate there.
Because their response has always become to anything that's brought up in that way, but Trump. But Trump. That's the only response they have to anything, is to talk about Donald Trump.
And I get it if Trump is a tough pill for some people to swallow. It makes sense. It makes sense, but it's endlessly talked about. That's the thing. It's not like it's not talked about, at least in the media. You know, I think there are some MAGA supporters who try to kind of ignore it and act like none of that stuff ever happened.
Well, one of the questions we're going to have to get to, and we're out of time, is
already?
Moral superiority. We got to save that one. We got one more piece of this puzzle to do, and then I have to get this out of my craw, and there's not enough time to develop it and get your thoughts on it. No. But is Governor Walz's understanding of the words of the Golden Rule and what that means. The last time I checked, that particular Golden Rule, the one that we're referencing, has something to do with the leading character of the New Testament, who I would suggest probably has, if not copyright authority, at least the right of first ownership and usage. Now, I know the Golden Rule is a concept that's been around in multiple faiths for a long time, but in the American Western tradition and experience, when we talk about the Golden Rule, we're talking about, as it's discussed for the most part in the New Testament. Well, Governor Walz has now come up with a new reality of the Golden Rule, and this won't be done until we talk about that. So we're going to have to endure one more session of this and come back and talk about it. And if we had these microphones opened at that time for the RNC, I would have used exactly the same terminology. We have to endure one more, because I think all of these are an endurance race. And what makes me crazy is they've moved from an actual functional reality of electing somebody for a reason and a purpose to the 4-day infomercial. And I think 4-day infomercials on any subject are intolerable. In fact, I'm surprised you didn't come in here like with an ice pack on your head, because you said last time the last thing you want to do is be coached up.
yeah.
So well, how'd you like that closing speech last night?
Yeah, a lot
and
of
he wasn't even the head coach. He wasn't even the head coach. No one knows that.
He was the defensive coach?
Defensive coordinator. He wasn't that. But, I mean, does anyone talk about that?
Was he the defensive coordinator? I heard he was an unpaid volunteer assistant
They
defensive
make it
coach.
sound like, I don't know.
Hey, but he probably still got the state championship ring, and that's respect.
Oh, yeah, they won. No, but why not be honest about it? Why not tell the truth? And why bash J.D. Vance for rising out of poverty and going to Yale? That's the thing that drives me nuts.
Oh, that was the line.
That drives me crazy.
About going to Yale.
Okay. That drives me crazy.
So your rise up out of poverty isn't... Okay.
Yeah.
There's more.
iVoters.com changes everything about the way we process elections. Instead of negative TV and radio ads and biased opinions from editorial boards, now people in all 50 states can get the facts about candidates and ballot issues from a nonpartisan, independent source. iVoters is fast, free, secure, and powerful. With iVoters, you can vote with confidence and encourage others to do the same. Free minds, free speech, free agents. iVoters.com, a public service of the American Policy Roundtable.
Is the pain over, or is it just beginning?
Well, we still have to talk about it, so I don't know. Does that count?
I did radio on Thursday night while it was going on. So I did. So I had to turn it down, and I was watching as I was listening. And who was interviewing me? Dennis Maniloff was saying the same thing. He's like, "I know you're watching it. You just have it turned down." I said, "Yeah, we talked." What was interesting though is they got the vice president off the stage on Thursday evening before the president would have been on the stage on Monday evening.
Hey, first off, we're talking about both conventions finally being over.
Yes.
The two cultic exposés are now complete. All right. The infomercial on Cultic America is now completed, and we don't have to listen to any more fake cheer noises amplified from microphone. And there's got to be a camera lens that they use, because I was watching last night the Democrats. The people were like ant size in the pans. That arena is not big enough to have an ant-sized view.
Probably
so
wide angle lens.
Wide angle from the rafters.
Yes. And they're doing this to make it look like there's a gazillion million people there.
It was very well produced. Yeah, I was watching some of the production value. Very, very well produced.
Audio and as far as the visuals, so it was outstanding. However, I have reached my limit. I'm absolutely done. That you cannot coach up a political party any more than that group of people had been coached. They brought, I don't know who's left. And the thing my boiling point was Oprah Winfrey. Oh, that was it. Okay. Over the top, I'm gone. The high priestess. I didn't watch hers. I haven't seen it yet. Right. I actually haven't seen hers yet. The high priestess of materialism.
Okay.
And you get a car, and you get a car, and you get a car, is sitting there lecturing us on the morality of Marxist socialism.
Can I go back to that?
My brain is exploding.
I want to go back to that car moment. Everyone gets a car. Because remember when she did that?
That's a while now. That's been a while.
But Kamala's saying, and you get $25,000 for a house, and you get $25,000.
Remember, the big government policies that are in place because of the people that were speaking this week are the reason some of those people didn't get to enjoy their car, because they couldn't afford the taxes they had to pay on the car that they received.
Oops. Okay. So yes.
Well, one funny thing about last night was, and now maybe this is bad parenting, perhaps, but I just had it streaming on my computer, just awaiting Kamala Harris's time.
And the dog left the room.
No, I had it on my earbuds. Caleb, my 9-year-old, walks up, pops in the earbuds, and starts watching it. And then I'm just hearing his commentary on it. I can't hear what's happening. I'm hearing his commentary. He's going, "This guy's not a very good speaker." Like, this guy, he's giving me the play-by-play. I liked that better than actually watching the event.
I could have heard him do the Republican one as well. That would have been a blast.
That would have. I mean, but he would have liked Hulk Hogan, right?
He enjoyed Hulk Hogan. Yeah, not gonna lie.
The rest of us may not.
Better not have been up that late to have watched Hulk Hogan live.
It was
summer. He got to enjoy it because it was summer. I will say this about the Democrat convention. All week with their signage was amazing. Everyone was coordinated, number one. Number two, I didn't realize they loved American flags the way they pretended, or the way they seemed to love American flags.
Way back that train up just a second. I have a number I'd like to introduce to the conversation. 1620. Anybody remember? 1620. The New York Times. For 10 years, this country's been taking it up the tailpipe from the people who've told us on critical race theory that the American story is an abomination in human history, and that we should be ashamed of America. We should be ashamed of the American story. We should be ashamed if we're not the right color or don't have the right certification. Ashamed, ashamed, ashamed. It has been nonstop all across the board. And all I heard for 4 days was, "We love our country. And last night, what I heard was, we love America's story. I heard last night that America's story is the most extraordinary story in the history of the world.
So were you glad to hear that?
No. Because I know they're lying. I know the people in that room did what they were told to do, but in their heart of hearts, they have been persuaded. And here's why I know that they're lying. Because their second theme is, we're not going back. We're not going back. Forward. Well, wait a second. What's back here is the Declaration of Independence. What's back here is the Constitution. What's back here are the first principles. And what's back here is the ugly stuff that's sinful and horrible and awful.
That you should learn from.
That we have to learn from. And be in a position of perpetual repentance about, in the sense of, we always have to check our mind.
That jumped out to me as well. It was
loud, wasn't it? I got loud right there.
I liked it. I thought it was good. I set you off. I did. I set you up for that one. I apologize. But I asked if you liked it. You answered. I've never heard.
You look sneaky with a tie on. I want you to know that. See, mischief is afoot. Yeah. Duncan shows up with a tie on.
Something's going on.
Thinks he's going to light up the old guy.
But he doesn't have on pants, so that makes up for it.
Listen, this is, hey, wow. Listen, this is, we got the cropped angle here.
Sorry, did we get you off your point?
You tried to.
Okay.
I don't like hearing people denigrate the past as much as I was hearing that. Just, we're not looking back. We're not going back. We're going forward. I always thought that learning from the past, learning from your ancestors, learning from people who came before you. Maybe I've read too much Chesterton, but I respect the people that came before me. I respect
and learn
what
from
they
the mistakes.
built.
Learn from the mistakes that they made.
Learn from the mistakes, but also look at the stuff that they've done that we can't do or we don't have the will to do. You know, we talk a lot about building buildings. You know, we've talked on 1850 about the monuments that have been destroyed in this country, the great buildings of the past that have been destroyed. If you're not doing something better than the past, maybe you shouldn't go forward.
The feed I was watching, and I know there was all different camera angles from different feeds that I found interesting during the Americana celebration, if you will, was when they played the national anthem, sang by the Chicks, formerly the Dixie Chicks.
I do love her voice. She has a great voice.
Well, Natalie Maines has an amazing voice. Larry the Cable Guy has a take on that, but I'll leave it to you to find that take on them. I noticed they focused a lot on them, though, because I wanted to see the crowd, because I wanted to see who was sitting or how many were sitting. Because I can tell you, as someone who goes to a lot of events where the anthem is played, there are a lot of people that don't get out of their seats. And I noticed that they didn't pan the crowd a lot during that. And I think that could be the reason why, because they know that wouldn't resonate with the American people, seeing people sitting during the anthem.
I just want to know, where's the New York Times? I want to know, where are the people that gave us the 1620 Project when their candidate for the presidency, who is a Jamaican and Indian descendant to this country, who is many people misrepresent as African American, because she's not, she's black. And quite frankly, I don't care.
Well, and she's the vice president right now.
Right. I have no, what I'm saying is, we have been told for years upon years, our children, our grandchildren have been taught that America's story is shameful. It's shameful. I want to know, when the New York Times' candidate for the presidency, a black female running, who's the vice president of the United States, stands up and talks about her love for her country and her love for this story, I want to know why the New York Times isn't front page, bold headlines, at war with Kamala Harris.
Well, again, you're asking for internal consistency and hypocrisy, and non-hypocrisy from people who may not believe in that.
It's just astounding to me. And you know what's, as so far in regards to media on radio and television, I haven't heard everything since last night, but I haven't heard anybody ask that question.
No,
it is a good question.
Well, because they know that message does resonate with the American people. She didn't talk much about policies on Thursday night. She talked about,
evidently they can count.
Well, but everyone gave her bio multiple times, right? I mean, the first half of her speech was her giving her bio. I'm like, well, we heard your husband say that. We heard your sister say that. We heard everyone say that. We know that. Get to the policies. The speech was relatively short by comparison to some others. What was she out? 37 minutes?
I think it was 29 minutes. It was brilliantly short.
Yes.
And very well delivered. Credit where credit's due. Is very well done.
She was forceful. She was.
I think it was one of her best.
But let's watch out, because guess who was on Jesse Waters' show last night? Jon Favreau.
Oh.
And I'm not talking about the chef and the movie producer. I'm talking about the guy who wrote Obama's speech.
Yeah.
His second inaugural
address. What is Favreau doing hanging around? Well, I'd like to know who wrote all these speeches. I really would. I would like to know who wrote Tim Walz's speech. I'd like to know who wrote Kamala's speech. I think they have an obligation to disclose. I think it's important. I'd like to know who's writing the stuff. It's good, but they're doing a good job. Walz's speech was great.
Yeah.
As far as content goes, if this was a fairy tale, that was a really good. That was really good talk.
Well,
sure.
I will say one thing that did frustrate me about her speech was the fact when she said she wasn't going to politicize the border, and the whole border bill has been nothing but politics since it started. You don't need a bill to secure the southern border. It's constitutional. Just stop
I'm
with it.
impressed that Donald Trump was able to dictate to the House and the Senate that they would not pass this bill. Boy, where's he been? We could have used a lot of other buttons being pushed. If he could stop that one, what about several others?
Well, and again, she's been in the position of border czar for 4 years. I know they're trying to backtrack that and scrub the internet.
I'm sorry. I thought Donald Trump was the incumbent that they're running against.
You know, he's actually not.
Well, you wouldn't know that because 12 of the last 16 years they've been in charge, but everyone seems to forget that as well, because on her first day, she's going to do. On my first day, I'm going to do it
today.
I'm like, you had your first day 4 years ago.
Yeah, you ever heard the Brian Regan comedy sketch where he's talking about his power's out and he's talking on the phone. He's like, "Can you just flip the switch?" He's like, "You have the switch? Like, could you flip it?" Like, he's saying, "Flip the switch." Like, she could flip the switch.
Well, has there ever been a convention in history to where the sitting president was ushered out after day one?
Oh, yeah, that's what you and I were texting about last night.
Well, Alan got barraged with like 8 in a row from me at like 11:45.
I'm sorry, I can't hear a word you're saying. All I can hear is the echoes of "Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe." And I want to finish the sentence. "Thank you, Joe, for getting the blank out of here.
Right.
Thank you, Joe, for walking away." Oh, but I'm sorry, but he's still president. Oops.
Well, and they're talking to him, but he's not in the room.
Yeah,
that's creepy. She's thanking him from the stage. He ain't there. Where is he?
He got pushed away. He's out in Cali on vacation.
When he wears a tie.
He is different. He is different. But
okay.
And I also think that highlights the fact when you hear Mark Kelly's speech. Mark Kelly's an astronaut. Who doesn't think an astronaut's cool?
Yeah.
Seriously. Like, why wouldn't you pick the astronaut? Because he may say something on the border that your administration doesn't agree with policy-wise because he lives in Arizona.
Walz was brilliant. It's like two sock puppets. They've got them both right where they want them. It's perfect. All right. And they're putting the words in their mouths and they're delivering them, and it's wonderful. Let me tell you what my conclusion on all of this is in regards to the Democrat side. There's a whole conclusion in regards to the Republican side. They've got their own issues.
Plenty of them.
And plenty of them. This is what we can teach our children. And I believe we must. This is about the symbolic presidency. Mm. She is just like someone who gets named the president to a corporation that really doesn't need a president. They just need a PR person that's got a good enough title.
Yeah.
So they create the role of the president as a public relations piece, and they bring in somebody who's got a big title. That's the way it works. That's why we have very few titles around here, because everybody matters 100% of the time. So she is now the symbolic president. She's going to be told what to do. She's going to be told what to say, and she'll make it her own because she's very good at that. Her greatest asset is empathy. So she can translate herself. This is what they say about her. She can translate herself into the emotional moment. It's a great gift. It's particularly a great gift for a teacher, a social services worker, for moms and dads. I mean, empathy is a strong gift. But if you study the character of great American presidents and great American leaders, you will not find empathy usually listed at the top because it's a different gift for a different role. But she's got that one, and she'll certainly make the most of it. But my question is this: she's the symbolic president. You know why? Because the administrative state is on full tilt running without her. She's not the president. She's out on the campaign trail. The current president's been hidden in his basement for 4 years, and now we don't even know where he is. And guess who's running the show? The administrative state is now in charge. Watch it. Who's running the government? The government's running the government. The administrative state is the power. She, as the executive branch, is the symbol. That's all she is. That's what they want.
And what highlights that more than anything is the fact that she did not receive one vote in the primary to be the nominee for president of the United States.
She didn't run in one election to get this nomination.
Not one. That highlights what you're saying to its fullest. The fact that, she's the symbol.
Yeah, she's the symbolic president. And this is the way the progressive left wants the presidency to be. This is classic Woodrow Wilson doctrine. He wanted a parliamentary system where an elite group of people ran the bureaucracy of the state. He started writing about that in the early 1900s, and that was what his administration was all about. And ironically, he ended up being completely incapacitated by a stroke, and his wife ran his administration in the final months.
At that point, you could just have a king or a queen and then a parliamentary system. You could just do that.
And Wilson was infatuated with the British system.
Yeah.
One thing I do want
to... The Brits, by the way, were the cool kids. Americans had a complex about this country for a long, long time, into the 1900s. And they always wanted to be viewed as popular with Europe because they were the cool kids. Now the cool kids were actually in the Democratic Convention. All the cool kids were there. I mean, Stevie Wonder was there.
I think we became the cool kids once we figured out dentistry. Once our teeth became better,
wow.
Isn't that when we became?
Wow! Shots fired at the Brits.
Sorry. Apologies. I did find it interesting. There are a couple massive, I almost said huge with a Y, Senate races happening across the country. I didn't see any of the candidates on the Democrat side that are trying to keep their seat. I didn't see them speaking at the DNC. I feel like they wanted to keep their distance because they're in states where they need the votes. John Tester and Sherrod Brown.
That's interesting. I saw the one candidate from Nevada, I believe, was there
in
yesterday.
Arizona as well.
Yeah.
In Arizona, I mean, that's such, he's going against Kari Lake, which that's a whole nother show to discuss and talk about.
The reason that they hate Donald Trump is they can't get him to go away. They just can't get him to go away. And he is willing to take on the bureaucracy in the administrative state. Right. That's what they hate. And so what they're doing is they're telling everyone at home and everyone in the room, and Keenan was best at that in his comedy routine, saying, this is what the other people are going to take away from you. And this is what we'll make sure doesn't get taken away from you. Therefore, you vote for us because we keep the administrative state with you in mind.
That was one of the lines last night in the speech I was texting Alan about. I got fired up about when they said Donald Trump handpicked 3 Supreme Court justices.
Yeah.
And I'm like, was he supposed to go to the phone book and just open it up?
What, blindfold?
Yeah,
just
like,
tell him the donkey. I got an idea.
Alan's like,
and you be a judge, and you be a judge.
Alan's like, what does everyone else do? So.
Yeah. I mean, that's literally his job to do that. They may not have liked his choices, but that's what he did.
Nice catch.
Yeah. But anyway, I want to talk about the life issue because I couldn't, during her speech, I couldn't help but think of David Daleiden, who we've talked about on this broadcast before. Yeah. David Daleiden was is an undercover journalist that was exposing some nefarious practices that Planned Parenthood was doing. I'm a family show, so I'm editing what I'm saying. Real heinous stuff. So there's an article that came out recently from the Washington Examiner. And I just want to read a little bit about it. It says Harris's role in the Daleiden investigation. Because this is something people don't know enough about, or they've forgotten, or it's not being talked about enough, I don't think. But it says Harris was Attorney General of California at the time and was directly involved in the prosecution of Daleiden. This includes the controversial decision to raid Daleiden's home, during which officers took his personal laptop and multiple hard drives. Letters obtained from court documents from Harris's time as Attorney General reveal that she met with Planned Parenthood executives prior to the raid on Daleiden's home that resulted in the seizure of the videos. At the time, Harris was running for California's open Senate seat and has been endorsed and had been endorsed by Planned Parenthood. So that's who was speaking at the last night of DNC.
The entire question of the use of the Department of Justice, particularly to persecute people who are pro-life, has not been discussed. There are multiple cases. There's one. There's the gentleman and his family in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
There are so many other examples.
Yeah, people praying in front of clinics.
Right. And where the Federal FACE Act in regards to protecting access, and just to be sure here, we don't think there's any good that comes out of anything that involves violence on public streets around abortion. No. This debate will not be altered or won or lost based on people getting in other people's faces and doing anything that's even remotely close to violence. I get that. But there is no question whatsoever. The pro-life movement. What about Tulsi Gabbard? What about's been done to her in regards to taking away her rights to fly or putting her on the no-fly list? What about the cases? We could go on. It started with Roger Stone. And I'm not any defender of Roger Stone, but you go look at Roger Stone and Bannon.
Navarro.
And Navarro and Michael Flynn and all of these places where the Justice Department was utilized to entrap people, to strip them of their rights, to do anything they can to put them in prison.
What about even January 6th? They talked about January 6th
and you see
last
how
night.
She started right there. She started her narrative on Trump is the boogeyman on January 6th and what he did. And
now listen, I think January 6th was very stupid and shouldn't have happened. But she said that armed people stormed the Capitol. They called it an insurrection. Listen, if you're going to have an insurrection, you should probably bring weapons. But,
well, it depends on what they said. They would say if you had bear spray, you were armed. And assaulting the police. Okay.
Yeah, it's just I didn't see a lot of armed people, basically.
I mean, some people got shoved. Look, there's
one
no
person
way.
died, and that was a Trump supporter.
Unarmed.
And shot. Now, she shouldn't. I don't think that she should have been breaking through the particular window she was doing. That's just not wise.
I don't think she should have been anywhere near the place.
So again, people think like, oh, you're defending January 6th. No, but to call it an armed insurrection, the worst armed insurrection of all time.
To lock the Capitol down and to through that whole inaugural process. But see, it's only indicative of what they were intending to do throughout all of COVID anyways.
Sure.
Stop and think about it. You know, the hypocrisy and all of that. While Tim Walz is out there saying, well, you were banning books, we were banning hunger in our schools. Excuse me, Governor. And while all the rest of us were trying to get those kids back in school and not lose 2 years of school, what were you doing? Keeping the schools shut.
Well, and the problem as well with January 6th is we don't know how many FBI agitators. I don't want to be a conspiracy theory guy, but when you look at January 6th, when you look at the people that were indicted for the plot to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan, and you see the FBI involvement in moving things behind the scenes.
The inequalities, I mean, we could go back to Hillary Clinton's, can't convict her. We can go back to Joe Biden, can't convict him on the document stuff.
The Her report.
The Her report. And we can go back to, we want the government out of your bedroom. Okay, but it's fine to send the government into Donald Trump's bedroom and into his medicine cabinet and everything else, looking for documents. But Joe, we can't prosecute. The abuse of the federal justice system and the Department of Justice is an inescapable injustice, period. And that is all on the watch of the Biden administration. If anybody was watching in the Biden administration.
So really all we're asking for is true justice.
Which law.
Equal protection under the law.
Yes. How does Dr. Allen define justice? Classical philosophical definition.
To each his own. That's the classical definition. And if Kamala Harris can do that, God bless her. And she should be advocating for that as in every other person who's in public office right now. And that's fine. She says the words. The only problem is the actions don't match the rhetoric.
Yeah.
So forward is their cry. Let's understand something about progressive philosophy. It's based upon evolutionary philosophy. And progressive philosophy combined with evolutionary philosophy was critical into getting us in so many places, not the least of which is the idea that every day we wake up in a new world. And because we're one day farther into the progressive line of the ascension of humanity, we must be better off and smarter today than we were going back there. So their natural repulsion is to anything that's old. That's their natural tendency. That's the philosophical attribute of where they are. It's their mindset. It's what their worldview creates. Problem I've got is that the whole thing is forward, screaming, shouting, yelling, forward, forward, forward. Well, we're about 100 yards from the biggest cliff that this country's ever seen. And if the idea is to go forward at 100 miles an hour as fast as you can, guess what? You're still going off the cliff. You may have all the best intentions in the world. Progressive philosophy leaves the physics of reality out of the equation. That's why it never works. Their ideas don't work. Forget the personalities, forget the names, forget whether we like this song or this cheer or that cheer. The ideas don't work. Solomon said there's nothing new under the sun. Did you guys hear anything new inside that hall?
I heard some, during the DNC roll call, I did hear some songs that I think if the American people looked up the lyrics to, they probably would be a little bit shaking their head.
Right. When Kamala Harris closed, she borrowed words, perhaps unintentionally, and it wasn't a direct quote. I'm not accusing her of plagiarism. But Paul Johnson, in his work, History of the American People, had a beautiful comment about the creation of the United States of America as the greatest adventure in the human experience. That's why he started his book. And it's an amazing quote, and I happen to agree with him. Kamala Harris last night said that the American story is the most extraordinary story in the history of the world.
She did say that.
I beg to differ. The American story is a magnificent story because, and it's extraordinary because of the real story that the people who built this country believed in, and that's the greatest story of all, which is the story of redemption. If you leave that story out, you're not just missing a chapter, you're missing a life. You're missing the whole thing.
The conversations are just getting started. To get connected, check out 1850mainstreet.com. And to get the facts on the candidates and issues that are going to be on your ballot this November, visit ivoters.com and enter your address and zip code. No name, no phone number, and no email address required. We don't want your personal information and we don't want your money. We want you to be well informed. So please share this podcast and ivoters.com with a friend today so they too can vote with confidence and encourage others to do the same. Thanks for stopping by today. We'll see you next time here at 1850 Main Street.